My Lords, defined benefit schemes, they've been described as an immoral bet upon an uncertain future. Long service in the public sector can mean getting, as my noble friend the Baroness stated, a pension of 2/3 of lifetime salary. That's inflation adjusted, and that's for as long as ye shall live. Now, some noble lords in this room will be beneficiaries of these or similar schemes, and I hope, therefore, that my remarks will not be received ungenerously, will not be taken amiss, because, my lords, we can't afford these schemes. The cost of them will inevitably and soon spiral out of control. As long ago as 2010, the very reasonable and thoughtful noble Lord Hutton was brought in to address this major problem. His inquiry had 9 advisers. 7 of them, I think, were in receipt of these public sector schemes. There was no representative of the taxpayer who pays for these schemes. The expert Neil Record was asked to be an adviser, but was then disinvited. I myself put in 2 20-plus page submissions to the Hutton Commission, but received 0 acknowledgement. The outcome of the exercise, a few valuable tweaks, but allegedly by pre-agreement, no change in the overall monies expected to be paid out. The Hutton's review's conclusion that these schemes were a good thing, not entirely surprising. The report admitted these schemes were costing us 1.9% of GDP, but asserted that the cost would settle at 1.2%. Did it? It didn't. In 2024, current costs were still 1.9% of GDP. But the OBR now says it will decline to 1.4%. Again, will it? It won't. But anyway, even 1.9% of GDP is outrageous, my lords. This is an extra pension for life enjoyed by a privileged 20% of the population that they have awarded to themselves, and that the remaining 80% of the population who actually pay the taxes that fund this 1.9% of GDP scheme don't and won't get. One Hutton report conclusion: the government must honour these promises in full. Indeed, yet countries around the world have already reneged on public sector pension obligations, and it's important to understand why they are having to do this and why we might have to. In the UK, current outgoings from these schemes are, as my noble friend the Baroness said, £57 billion a year. Where does that money come from, my lords? There is no pot of funds accumulated to pay it. Well, it comes from the monies being paid in from currently employed public servants, assertedly to fund their future benefits. Just now, entirely coincidentally, that money paid in is also, more or less, £57 billion. That's right, 2 entirely separate £57 billion amounts, money paid in by one group and paid immediately out to another. Let public servants currently employed beware. The money they are paying in, that they, most of them, believe is to fund their future pensions, instead goes straight out to others, so doesn't have to fund a penny of their future pension. It's a Ponzi scheme, my lords, just like Bernie Madoff, no different. And while the flows currently appear to be in balance, that's just a momentary coincidence. Soon, as more public servants retire, outgoings start getting increasingly larger than incomings. The £57 billion paid in each year will stay much the same, or even decline, if the number of public servants employed declines. But by 2060, as my noble friend Baroness Neville-Rolfe said, the amount paid out will have risen to over £130 billion a year, which is a £37 billion gap. That £130 billion paid out in 2060 is only as low as that if we were to stop all these schemes right now. If we don't stop them now, future monies paid out rise exponentially, with the gap widening even further. That's what happens with a Ponzi scheme, my lords. It becomes unsustainable eventually. The present value of commitments to date is somewhere between £1.5 and £2 trillion, not much smaller than our entire GDP. If we keep the schemes going, then over time that number will rise to, who knows, 4 or even more trillion pounds, a colossal sum. What happens when people start to live even longer? When these schemes were set up, the average retiree lived just 3 or 4 years beyond retirement. Now, people live to over 80, 15 or 20 or more years beyond retirement. That's the reason these schemes are now entirely unaffordable. When we start to live even longer than we do now, as we will, the cost will become astronomical. But the commitments to keep paying, as long as ye shall live, are being made right now at a time when we have no idea what medical advances will be made, nor therefore what we will end up having to pay. That's what makes these schemes so reckless, my lords. A risky, unknowable future with undercooked analysis that passes an enormous concealed cost to future taxpayers. What would a moral, future-proof scheme look like? Much what I proposed to the Hutton Commission all those years ago in 2010. First, we must all be in it together. No one law for the public sector elite, another for the rest. Second, and therefore the only defined benefit scheme, should be for state pensions. Third, and accordingly, all public sector schemes should be moved instanter to defined contribution. Fourth, all obligations funded and unfunded should be owned up to, not hidden as now, and published as part of the reported national debt. Fifth, steps should be taken to fully fund existing commitments and not take them out of other pensioners' contributions. And if things get worse, perhaps let us say a 75% tax rate on all public sector pensions above £30,000 a year. My lords, most private sector companies closed their defined benefit schemes down in the 90s and noughties. Had they not, their companies would have gone bankrupt. The public sector has long been in precisely the same situation. As I say, a possible impediment to change is that almost all MPs, and indeed some members of this House, are beneficiaries of similar schemes. Just one MP, Jacob Rees-Mogg, had always, as a matter of principle, turned the benefit down. We need both our elected and unelected legislators to show that same magnanimity of spirit in rectifying this situation. Let us remember, my lords, the concerns and anger of what is called Gen Z, deprived of free tertiary education, of housing, of jobs, and in the main of pensions such as these. Once they dominate the electoral rolls, might they vote to go even further than a 75% tax on rich public sector pensions? I close with a final quote from the Hutton Commission. Quotes, "In principle, it is undesirable for non-public sector workers to have access to these schemes." The Commission was right. To give these benefits beyond the privileged few would indeed break the bank. But as we have seen, giving such schemes just to that privileged 20% in the public sector breaks the bank anyway. My lords, a full review of and debate on this topic is surely essential, and urgently so.